Welcome to Myth Madness. This season will focus on Persian, or ancient Iranian, mythology. In the previous episode, I gave some background on the history of Persia and told how a handful of kingdoms and empires rose and fell over the course of the last 3,000 years. I told how all these changes resulted in the mythology developing a series of layers that influenced the whole material in interesting but also subtle ways. The most significant of these layers is provided by Zoroastrianism. This is a religion founded around 3,000 years ago by its prophet Zarathustra, commonly known in the West today as Zoroaster. Ancient Iranian tribes in Central Asia at the time had an older religion and mythology, which I would imagine is in some ways similar to Greek mythology, with a bunch of different gods, goddesses, and human heroes all running around and doing different things. All that changed when Zarathustra preached that one of the gods, Ahriman, was the sole creator and supreme deity. Zarathustra also claimed the universe was divided in two. The forces of good, led by Ahriman, also known as Ormazd, were locked in eternal combat with the forces of an evil spirit named Angra Mainyu, also known as Ahriman. From Zarathustra's early teachings, Zoroastrianism spread and eventually became the state religion of the later Persian empires. In the previous episode, I shared what some Zoroastrian religious texts had to say about how the universe was created and the eternal struggle between good and evil. For sources, I mostly relied on the Zadspram and the Bunda Hishni, which were written around 800 AD. Both cover stories on the creation of the world, the life of Zarathustra, and some myths about the legendary first rulers of Iran. While the two documents were written around 800 AD, both summarize information from older religious texts that could go back as far as 1000 BC. Many of those older texts are referred to as the Avesta and form a collection of the most important religious material in Zoroastrianism. There are different parts of the Avesta, and some of it is claimed to have even been written by Zarathustra himself. The Avesta is famously hard to read, with very abstract language, which is why later Zoroastrians busied themselves with making more texts to explain and elaborate on detail found in the Avesta. The Zadspram and the Bunda Hishni were some of these texts. In this episode, I will expand upon the creation story from last episode and talk about what those same Zoroastrian documents say about the creation of human beings. So here it goes. During the world's creation, the creator, or Mazd, fashioned a series of firsts: the first man, a first animal, and a first plant. Gayomart was the first man, and like the other firsts, was created by Ormazd to assist the god in his fight against the evil spirit Ahriman. However, you should note that Gayomart is not really treated like an actual human. He's more like an ideal prototype that later humans are based on. Ormazd created Gayomart out of earth found on the bank of the river Veydayet. This river is unknown. It is often identified with the Oxus or Amu Darya rivers or other rivers to the northeast of Iran. But regardless of where he was made, Gayomart was a fabulous creation. He was said to measure 4 medium reeds, or say 4 meters, in height, and he shined like the sun. While his body was fashioned out of the earth, his sperm was made out of the sky's brightness. When he was created, he apparently had the form of a 15-year-old, which in ancient Iran was the age a boy reached adulthood. Gayomart was sometimes called Garshah, meaning king of the mountains. Ormazd's creation of Gayomart and the other prototypes helped keep Ahriman at bay for a long time, but not forever. As I discussed last episode, the evil spirit eventually returned with a swift vengeance. The first animal, a bull, was killed. One of Ahriman's demonic followers, Astiwahad, whose name means he who dissolves bones, attacked Gayomart with such nasty things as want, sloth, lust, and 1,000 different diseases. However, Ormazd intervened to protect Gayomart by putting him to sleep. This kept the first man alive for 30 years, at which point he finally succumbed to his illnesses and fell down dead. Even in death, though, Gayomart's role in Ormazd's creation was not over. From his body came 7 or 8 different types of metal. The exact number depends on the version. The Bundahishni says lead appeared from his head, tin from his blood, silver from his brain, iron from his feet, copper from his bones, crystal, although it's not actually a metal, from his fat, steel from his arms, and gold from his soul. His sperm was purified by fire, guarded by the spirit Neryasan, and planted in the earth. After 40 years, it grew into rhubarb. The double entwined stem of this plant grew into the first truly human adult couple, Mashya and Mashyana. According to the Bundahishni, the first thoughts these two had when they looked at each other were, "That is a human." Their first actions were more prosaic. They both went to pee. When they were ready, Ormazd appeared and spoke to these first humans. He gave them instructions on how to live life, declaring they should think good thoughts, speak good speech, and do good actions. He also stressed that they should not worship Ahriman or any of the demons. No good could possibly come of that. However, after Ormazd was done, Ahriman quickly rushed into their minds. He made their thoughts sinful and forced them into telling lies, specifically one that it was actually Ahriman, not Ormazd, who was responsible for the creation of water, earth, and plants. That lie cursed them forever. For their first 30 days, Mashya and Mashyana went hungry and used grass to cover their bodies. At that point, the couple found a white-haired goat. To ease their hunger and quench their thirst, they drank the goat's milk. But afterwards, Mashyana told Mashya that the milk made her feel ill, and she wished she had not drunk it. However, this comment was a lie put into her mouth by Ahriman. By uttering this lie out loud, that the milk made her feel sick, Mashyana allowed the demons to gain strength. With their new strength, the demons tampered with the world's food, removing its flavor so that forever afterwards, all food had 1/100th of the flavor it had originally. After another 30 days, Mashya and Mashyana found a sheep. Guided by the gods, they killed the sheep, made a fire from the wood of 2 trees, roasted the sheep, and offered up a share of it to Ormazd and the other good gods. This was the first sacrifice. Mashya and Mashyana learned to weave and make clothes from animal skins. They dug a hole and built the first kiln, making metal blades with it. They cut down trees and made bowls from the wood. These were all good actions, pleasing Ormazd. But the demons, meanwhile, began to work mischief. The demons caused Mashya and Mashyana to feel envy towards each other. The demons then appeared and told them that they would feel better if the couple offered sacrifices to the demons. So Mashyana milked a cow and poured a libation for the demons. This act allowed the demons to gain more strength, and they responded by causing the first man and woman to lack desire for each other for 50 years. After a long 50 years, they finally discovered sex and wondered why they hadn't started doing it earlier. Soon, Mashyana gave birth to twins. The babies were so sweet, their mother and father ate them, each parent eating one. After that disaster, Ormazd intervened and removed the sweetness of children from their thoughts. Forever afterwards, parents think their children are cute and sweet, but not enough to eat. After that episode of strangeness, Mashya and Mashyana had 6 more pairs of male-female twins who married each other. One of them gave birth to another pair, named Fraway and Frawayhi. From this couple were born 15 more pairs of twins. All of these couples lived for 100 years and had children in their 50th year. In the Zoroastrian texts, all of these events were said to take place in a land called Quanira, which is actually one of several regions the world was divided into. The ancient Iranians believed the earth was a flat disk floating on a great sea and with the sky enclosing it as a dome. The earth itself was divided into 7 regions or continents by forests, mountains, and seas. The central region was Quanira and was believed to be larger than all the others combined. It also had a large mountain in the middle, called Hera, or Alborz. Originally, according to the myths, this central region, Quanira, was the only one inhabited with people. But as I just mentioned, the early human couple, Fraway and Frawayhi, had 15 pairs of twins. 9 of these pairs of twins decided to leave. they got on the back of a bull, not the first bull, and rode it over the seas and went to live on the other continents. The remaining 6 pairs of twins stayed in Quanira, and they had their own children. Each of these pairs became the legendary founders of different groups of people. For example, Hoshang and Guzay were the fabled ancestors of the Iranians. One of their immediate children was named Siamak. The names of all these characters and who exactly was in what generation vary slightly between the different Zoroastrian sources. The versions are incredibly muddled, so I chose one to focus on here. But you should note that the names Siamak and Hoshang are very important, and this won't be the last we hear of them. The key point of this story is that all the descendants of Mashya and Mashyana populated the world. I'll also point out that the central region, Quanira, which was considered the ancestral home of the ancient Iranians, eventually came to be called Aranshar, and was identified with the land of Iran itself. Over time, this originally ancient Iranian division of the world was refined further, and the regions outside of Quanira, Aranshar, were identified with the neighboring lands around Persia, places like India, China, Arabia, and others. This episode and last episode covered the creation of the world and humans according to the Zoroastrian texts. But how did that mythological tradition change over time? What about hundreds of years later, during a time when Zoroastrianism was no longer the dominant religion in Persia? For that, let's look at the Shahnameh. But first, as a reminder, the Shahnameh is a Persian epic poem written in 1010 AD by a Muslim man named Ferdowsi. It was composed centuries after the Arab conquest of Persia, and during a time when most Persians were Muslim, not Zoroastrians. Yet many of the stories recorded in the Shahnameh go back to ancient Iranian and Zoroastrian times, and flirt with some Zoroastrian ideas, but packaged in a way to make them acceptable to a medieval Muslim audience. In the Shahnameh, most of the Zoroastrian lore about creation and the origin of humans is omitted. But the evil spirit Ahriman, Gayomart, and some of the early humans still appear. Over time, though, shifts in language occurred so that Gayomart is instead called Keyumars, or even Kumars. But make no mistake, in the mythology, he is the same character as Gayomart from the Zoroastrian Avesta. For the sake of simplicity, I will usually call him Gayomart or Keyumars. The Shahnameh elaborated on him in different ways, although many of these details likely extend back into previous centuries. We get nothing about this Keyumars being the first man, although it is slightly implied. Instead, we are told outright he was the first king. He lived in the mountains, and established his throne there, similar to how the earlier Zoroastrian Gayomart was called King of the Mountains. The humans who lived under Keyumars' rule lived in the mountain caves. Keyumars taught his subjects how to properly prepare food and make clothing. They dressed in leopard skins, so they didn't walk around naked. Like with his earlier Avestan form Gayomart, Keyumars is described in superhuman terms. All the animals, both wild ones and domestic ones, would come to his throne, line up in front of the king, and bow down to him. As a sign of his great power, the creator granted Keyumars far. What is far? Well, remember when I said that Gayomart shined like the sun? Far goes back to the same idea. The word means glory or radiance. In the Avesta, the specific word is Kavarana, but by the time of Ferdowsi, it was shortened to far. In the Avesta, far was not just something that was bestowed on Gayomart. Other beings, especially gods like Ormazd, had it too. When someone had far, they were perceived as radiant or shining. In this way, it's actually very similar to the halos in Christian religious art, with their circle of light appearing over the heads of people. In fact, in Persian art throughout medieval times and later, halos were also used to show which characters, like Keyumars, had far. Halos or special flames in fact appear in art all over the world, in India, in Buddhist art, in Islamic art. In the context of the Shahnameh, far is essentially the favor of the creator, and it is given to Keyumars to show that he has the god's blessing and the right to rule as king. Besides the ethereal far from the creator, in the Shahnameh, Keyumars was also blessed in another, more conventional way. he had a son named Siamak. In the epic poem, like his father, the young prince Siamak was wise and earnest. Keyumars loved his son very much, and the sight of Siamak was the one thing in the whole world that never failed to make the king happy. Siamak grew into a fine young man. He had no enemies, and was loved by his father's subjects. That is to say, he had no human enemies. His only real enemy was Ahriman, and the evil spirit planned to use him to hurt his old foe, Keyumars. Ahriman himself also had a son called the Black Deeve. He was a monstrous demon who was bloodthirsty like a savage wolf. The Black Deeve gathered an army of Ahriman's other demon followers and prepared to attack the kingdom of Keyumars. Keyumars and Siamak were unaware of any of this, but not for long. One day, a being named Sorush appeared. In the Shahnameh, Sorush is treated like an angel and is sent by the creator. But Sorush is also present in the Avesta as Sorayosha. In those early Zoroastrian texts, he is treated as a guardian spirit for humanity. He spreads Ormazd's teachings and acts as a judge for the dead. He is handsome, tall, and strong. He wields a large wooden club and smashes demons with it. He also uses prayer as a weapon. This Sorush descends to earth 3 times a day to fight demons. The Avesta says he never sleeps and has not slept since the 2 spirits Ormazd and Ahriman made their creations. In the Shahnameh, Sorush's Zoroastrian connections are dropped, and he behaves more like a typical Abrahamic angel. He appeared to Siamak, dressed in fine leopard skin. Sorush told the young man about Ahriman's plot. Since Keyumars was very old, it fell to Siamak to organize the defense of the land. Siamak gathered an army, consisting of beasts, birds, and fairies. Since this was still very early days in the history of the world, armor had not been invented yet. So in order to have some protection, Siamak wore a leopard skin to battle. The 2 armies, one good, the other evil, came together. Siamak bravely strode forward to fight the Black Deeve. But Ahriman's son was too quick for him. The Black Deeve grabbed Siamak and sunk its claws into his poorly protected body. The demon threw Siamak aside to lie in the dust and die from his wounds. Ahriman's forces had won their first victory. When Keyumars learned of Siamak's death, he was distraught. The king descended from his throne, crying and pulling at his hair. All of the humans, animals, and birds gathered together and cried. They wore blue to remember the prince and mourned Siamak for a whole year. At the end of the year, Sorush returned again. This time, he appeared to Keyumars. He scolded the first king and told him he had mourned long enough. It was time to stop weeping and return to sound mind. Keyumars had a job to do. He needed to gather an army and fight against the Black Deeve. Ahriman could not be victorious for too long. And that's all for today. The next episode will continue the story and cover more of the Shahnameh epic poem. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. As always, thank you for listening.